I've just been thinking about how we approach this thing that is inevitable. Change is always coming in our lives, positively and in a healthy way. And then thinking, I guess, about like, there are changes that we plan for, and there's also obviously changes that just kind of come out of nowhere. And what's a healthy way of walking through those situations?
I think the idea of preparing for change is really interesting, because how can you do that? Like, so my wife and I would love to like do that someday. Here are all the things. Yeah, it's like, here are all the things that we have to do. We have to like prepare, because I think, granted, there are certain situations that you can prepare for, but there are things that you're not going to be prepared for. But the idea that if anything's going to happen, I have to be putting in the time now and like prepare for change. How do you openly accept change?
Hey man, you want to talk about God?
We're doing the test between Corey, who has had a background in Scripture, and
Corey,
Matt, who is also a PK but knows nothing.
They are all different shapes, sizes.
Yes, you are tall. I am not.
We know. Matt, what wood was Noah's Ark made out of?
Easy.
We were talking earlier. I'm not a carpenter, so
Corey?
you know.
Mahogany.
It was gopher wood. It's in
gross.
Genesis 6:14. How long did the flood rain fall in the story of Noah and the Ark, Matt?
Well, what kind of, we defining by our days? What kind of time?
What's in the biblical
measurement
text?
Here, who's to say the number of days from the text?
I believe the answer
align with
is
what
40 days and 40 nights.
Corey would be correct.
That's what I was
Not
gonna say.
dissimilar from the amount of time that Jesus went into the wilderness
Come
to
on,
fast.
preach it. Come on.
That's what I was going to
make
Who
all-
suggested that Joseph interpret the dreams of Pharaoh?
say.
These are kind of hard for you.
Yeah, God did. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're wrong.
You are wrong.
There's a baker, and there's somebody else.
Who's that somebody else? If a baker has to do with food, what typically goes with food?
A butler, a servant, a server.
You're getting closer. You're getting
Bartender,
warmer.
Like he was like a
With food, you typically drink
sommelier.
in a sommelier.
Yeah, yeah.
In biblical times, there was someone who was a.
The cupbearer.
Hey, he got it. These are way too hard for Matt, so we're just gonna stop.
I think we're doing good.
All right, you want to keep going?
One more. Let's do one more.
One more.
A terrible start.
This is great.
All right. Well, we prayed for the Raiders.
Yeah.
What was the first of the 10 plagues in Egypt? I'll even give you multiple choice, Matt. Okay. We have frogs. We have darkness. We have the Nile turned to blood. And we have a plague. Let's see, plague of lice.
You have a 25% chance.
Sure.
You have lifelines too.
It's not plague of lice.
Okay.
So I'm between, I'm going to say darkness.
Corey, what's your final
I would
answer?
say frogs. I don't know.
Both of you are wrong.
The blood.
The blood was
That was
the
the first one.
There's a lot of frogs up here, at least where I live. There's a lot of frogs. They're gross.
In your townhome community?
Yeah.
There's frogs.
Yeah,
I don't see a lot of frogs. We don't live that far away from each other.
I know. Somebody must have unleashed them by me, but there's like
It's like the lantern
every
flies.
couple of weeks. I mean, I feel like it's maybe not that much, but every couple of weeks I see a frog, and it's on my sidewalk, and they're gross, man. Like
Why are they
couldn't-
gross? What do you mean?
It's a me thing.
Let's see.
I think they're gross.
Maybe it'll upset animal rights activists, but I used to catch frogs all the time. as a child.
I think we should stop the story here.
But then we would use them to fish with. Hook them.
Similar to like fly fishing.
No,
but you just throw
like
a frog out there.
No
Yeah,
line.
but
Just throw some
Throw a frog in the
once
water.
you put the hook into the frog, it sinks. Flies
right, no.
float.
But you're getting the bottom feeders, the deep fish.
Catfish.
Did you ever eat a catfish?
No, not. Well, I have eaten catfish. Not any that I caught though. The ones that we caught were too dirty.
I had some at Longhorn Steakhouse, I think.
Yeah, they would have just tasted like mud. The
That
ones
and
we were
rattlesnake.
catching.
It's a delicacy.
Biggest fish I've ever caught was a carp, though. Very similar, kind of similar to a catfish.
I don't think I've been fishing since I was like 13 or 14 years old.
Would you like to go fishing?
I would love to go fishing.
I would go fishing.
I would like to enjoy some stillness
Yeah.
and like,
Well, like I would want to take a trip and like get a boat and fishing rods, and then set out at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Hit it
you
right,
lost me.
dude. The stillness of the water that early in the morning, though, it's glass. It's beautiful.
I believe it. I get all the reasons that people fish. I totally get it. And I think I could enjoy it.
To be clear,
I don't think, I'm not going to do
to be
well
clear,
out
if
there.
we ever took a fishing trip, what I would want to do is find a fishing trip that we could go on that had like a guide with us
Yeah.
that knew where the fish were, that could take us to places
Yeah.
so that we aren't just like sitting in the middle of a lake being like, why aren't we catching fish? Because I have a fraternity brother who does fishing charters off the North Carolina coast, and they have what they call down south, we call them honey holes. And
Like
so
a bear.
yeah,
It's a honey
well,
hole?
kind of. But like my fraternity brother, his grandfather used to sink stuff in the sound. So they would sink tires, they would sink different things to create habitats for fish. And now his family knows where all these things are that were sunk.
Sounds
So
like a nice excuse to litter.
it was creating artificial
different.
reefs.
That's different.
Creating artificial reefs. Yeah. And so I've gone out on fishing charter with him. We went into the sound. We didn't catch anything for like 30, 45 minutes. And then he just took us over to one of his honey holes. And we caught 6 fish in 15 minutes. It was wild.
I think we need more honey holes in the world.
Yeah.
You know, with different areas of life, though, not just
Yeah.
fishing.
Yeah.
Places you can just go and get a good thing,
That would be nice.
like the Cheesecake Factory.
Wait, do you consider the Cheesecake Factory a honey hole?
I'm not a big fan of the Cheesecake Factory.
I'm not either. That's why I was asking.
I would just,
It's a good
thinking-
good example.
Applebee's could be a honey hole.
Sure.
Applebee's?
Haven't been to an Applebee's since high school either.
Half
There's
price
one close
apps?
to my house. Yeah, 2 for $20 kind of deal.
Dollaritas are back. Applebee's.
$1.
When's the last time you went
It's
to an
exactly
Applebee's,
what
Matt?
you think it is.
You get a margarita for $1.
Yeah.
Is it just sour mix?
100%.
Heartburn.
Oh, yeah.
Well, tonight is not. I don't like every time it's just the three of us. It's not a band jam.
Yeah.
I feel like we have actual topics that we talk about, and to transition us out of our shenanigans. Corey, you have a topic that's been floating around. I feel like.
Yeah. I sent a text earlier, but just something I think I've been thinking about the last couple weeks is change. And I think it feels natural because we could say change is coming for all of us, but like in a scenario where you're about to, for me personally, Abby and I are about to have a son. A lot is going to change. And so thinking about the process of change and what it is. And I think I also have a sense of I think I deal with change pretty well generally, meaning there are some people that, if they have an expectation of a thing happening and then the plans change, it's that maybe they wouldn't be described as somebody that goes with the flow super well. That's can be uncomfortable, cause anxiety, XYZ. But yeah, I've just been thinking about how we approach this thing that is inevitable. Change is always coming in our lives, positively and in a healthy way. And then thinking, I guess, about there are changes that we plan for, and there's also obviously changes that just kind of come out of nowhere. And what's a healthy way of walking through those situations. So thinking about having a conversation about that, one, it's like a selfish motive because I can think of a big change that's about to happen in my life. But also I think that because it's inevitable, we all deal with it, and maybe could be an interesting conversation.
Yeah. I think the idea of preparing for change is really interesting because how can you do that? Like, so you're having a baby soon.
Yeah.
My wife and I like would love to like do that someday. And it's like, here
When
are
you're
all the
older.
things. Yeah. It's like, here are all the things that we have to do. We have to like prepare because I think granted there are certain situations that you can prepare for, but there are things that you're not going to be prepared for. But the idea that if anything's going to happen, I have to be putting in the time now and like prepare for change. How do you actually, is that real? Because if you try to prepare for everything, the reality is that there are going to be so many things that happen to you that you would have never had the chance to prepare for. Or so how do you openly accept change? When do you rationally prepare for something, and when, because even your preparation could fall short, and then you're in a whole different situation. But
Yeah. And I think there's something that can be limiting because we think we have to be, again, that becomes very like self-focusing to say like, I need to do X, Y, and Z before I can make a change. So it becomes like limiting because we won't. And I think I fall into that a lot. Like I want to have everything taken care of before I even think about making a change. Because I want to be as prepared as I can be. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can become a non-starter.
Right. I also want to say that I would put having a child or having another child in the box of like, if you are a good parent, it doesn't matter how prepared or unprepared you are, like you're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, before my first son was born, I'd never changed a diaper. I changed a diaper a couple hours after he was born. Like,
Sure.
you figure it, like you just do it, like you figure it out. The first ones are weird too. They're black. They're ugh.
I have a photo of the first diaper I
Chocolate
changed.
pudding.
And I took it, and I'm literally just kind of like holding up, like kind of like,
Uh-huh.
And I thought about that photo today, literally, when we took Ruby out, but she had,
Right.
babies do it. Everybody poops. Let's
Right.
not make this weird.
Right.
But I mean, now at like 2.5 years old,
Right.
like their poops are like, I remember the first time seeing my kid having like a human poop and being like, whoa. But now
were
it's
you
just like,
proud in that moment?
no,
Or
I
like,
was just
here
like,
we are.
I was like, I remember the first time because Us is a couple years older, and talking to you, Tay, and like being like, like Ruby's poops are so little right now. She's a baby. Like this kid, like Us he's going on like at the time in my head, I'm like, he's like a 40-pounder. Like what kind of poops does he have? And he's like, oh. And being like, how do you even deal with that much poop? But then you just like, oh, and it's
You
like
just
it's
kinda
slow.
deal
You
with
you just wipe it up.
And like but like even in the sense of like preparation and all these different things, like my mom also has 2 boys, right? Myself and my brother, and she was telling us leading up to Brooke giving birth of how often we would pee on her. Like she would lay us down to change our diapers, and we would just pee.
Right. I'm nervous about that with the boy thing.
And here's what I will tell you. And so like the first month of changing Ossie's diaper, like it was, you had one prepared, and then like you did the switch, right? But like neither one of them have ever peed on me. I think Brooke got peed on once.
Wow.
And neither one have ever peed on me.
There's hope.
Yeah.
So like that was one of those things where it was like,
Ruby's peed on me.
it was like, be prepared for this.
Yeah.
And then it never happened.
But if it were to happen,
Right.
you got the other diaper, you're ready.
At the end of the day, like, dude, Matt, there are things that you do as a parent that you would never do, and you only do because they're a child. Like, I'll ask Corey a question. Yeah. Corey, let's say that you're at a restaurant, okay, and your daughter is eating food, and she starts to like choke. Something's caught in there, and then she starts like gagging like she's gonna throw up. Like, what is the first thing that you do in that situation?
Call 911.
That's not true.
Just kidding. I'd probably pat her on the back, like go through like.
But I'm saying like she is going to throw up. She's going to.
You just put your hand under her mouth.
Correct. You go to catch it. That is the answer. Is you go to catch it.
Yeah.
Like they're going, like you can have this hand behind their back, but the other hand is like here in front of their mouth to catch it so it doesn't go anywhere. And like the thought of doing that for anyone except for my small children, like is disgusting and weird, and I would never even think about it. But like when
even for Abby, I'd be like maybe willing to help with pulling the hair.
You're on your own.
But I'm like, go ahead, babe. Let it out.
With a child, you're literally like, okay, here, like into my hands, go.
It's got to go somewhere.
And then I'll figure out what to do with it after the situation.
Go to the waitress.
Right, please. Please.
Do you have a towel?
I feel like, particularly with the change of having a child, I don't think, my personal opinion would be that no one is ever actually ready to have a child. You can be over-prepared with materialistic things. Because half of what you buy before, I would say 75% of what you buy before you have your first kid, you're never going to use. Or what you get given as a gift. And then we have this parental instinct that kicks in the second you see your child being born. And you may not, like, you don't just get like an instant knowledge download, but you just turn into this position of like, I'm going to figure this out because this is my child I have to take care of.
So my question would be like, does that apply to things outside of just our children? Like when we deal with situations, circumstances in our lives, the same way or not? I would say the answer is no.
I don't think
the answer is like, we don't always apply, but why? So like if it's our flesh and blood, yes, we're going to adapt, we're going to improvise, we'll just get through it. Like you're going to, but like I don't give myself the same benefit of the doubt with a change that happens in a different circumstance.
Can you give an example of a different kind of change?
Yeah. Like, so like personally, I would say like when I'm trying to think of like things that have caused like changes that have happened, like big changes that have caused a shift. So that could be career-wise, that could be, maybe you lost a relationship, like those. I think that I am more likely to carry a feeling of like the imposter syndrome going into a new position career-wise than I was with having Ruby, like my first child.
The first answer off the top of my head is because when you go into a new place, such as career-wise, there are other people that you compare yourselves to. And when you're being a parent, it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing.
I think comparison still plays a factor in parenthood.
Yeah, but it's like that's
seeing other people that have kids and go through like
It does, but like you have never seen how Brooke and I treat Aussie at 3:00 in the morning when he wakes up crying.
Sure.
Right? But you do see a coworker, a manager, a colleague, how they deal with a deal not coming through. Like
I think what you're hitting on though is that there is like maybe an innate sense of trust where you describe it as being like you just naturally, like there's a human instinct that goes into being a parent that sometimes I think I look at other changes and I don't fall back on the same inherent trust that I will just be able to do those things. And
I don't know. My response to like your text, and we even talked about it a little bit yesterday, is like how you prepare for change, I think is mainly like a personality thing. Like how much you try to prepare for something is based on you and like your situations and your personality. But what differentiates people is how they respond to change and what you do after that, because I think that's where the big differentiation comes in, because some people react to change with shutting down. Some people excel in a new situation. Some people are more, they close in more and internalize things more. Some people push out more. Like I think that like change in my head is we can all prepare different ways. We can all some people prepare the bare minimum. Some people have 14 backup plans to their backup plan. Cool, great. That's amazing for you, whatever works for you. But how you respond to it is, I think, what makes change so interesting.
Is change something that gives you anxiety?
Not generally. It depends, but I try to take it with a look of like, if I can't do anything about it, there's no sense in stressing about it. And the only thing that I can do is if change is coming. I underwent an organizational change in work earlier this year, and I had a great relationship with my old boss. Felt like he and I were actually becoming like personal friends rather than just like had a good co-working relationship. And then all of a sudden, like I went in one day, found out that I got moved to another team. Never met this guy. I still actually haven't. It's all virtual, but like I like was upset about it for an hour. But then in a situation like that, I think the healthy way to go about it is, I can sit there and shake my fists and fight all the way through it. But what's that going to do? The decision's been made.
I think preparing for change is less of like situation to situation. I think it needs to be more of like a position of our hearts.
My answer to Matt, the question you asked Matt, would be different. It is situational, how I react to change. And maybe not in all good ways.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. If you, or if my wife tells me that something is going to happen, sets an expectation, and then it doesn't happen and something changes.
Sure.
I will react one way. If somebody else that I don't have this great relationship with, that's just like changes Matt, somebody, no, but like somebody's like, oh, can you, like, if my wife is like, hey, we're going to go out to dinner on Wednesday night, it's going to be date night, it's going to be great. And then Wednesday at 5:00, she's like, yo, we're not going anymore. Something came up. I'm going to react in a certain way. But if I had set up on Thursday night to go get coffee with somebody I met at church, and then at 6:00 and at 5:00, they text me and they're like, yo, I can't make it anymore. That change will elicit a different response. Does that make sense? And I think that I internalize things based on whether it was in my control or out of my control. If something changes that was in my control and it changes in a negative factor, then there are things that I go through. If something changes and I had no control over it, then let's handle it different.
Can we, if we lean into that, like, because I think a lot of us are in that spot where we put like, hey, I'm in control of this. Now something has changed. What are the feelings that you feel?
Me personally, I would say it's very momentary regret. It doesn't last very long because there's nothing I can do about it. So if something changes negatively that I could have done something different about, well, don't do that again. That sucks. But now what am I going to do? Now we got to go figure this out.
Because there has to be an expectation that something's going to go wrong. Something's going to happen. The things that are in your control, like, you have to understand that it's going to happen, and you have to accept that and be okay with it, because that's really like, failing is the way to learn the best.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's where if I would ask, like, what are the pitfalls of that we walk into when we have planned change, like we have change coming, but we do all this preparation. And it's like, the thing is, like, we're not really planning for change. We're planning for a picture of how I want this thing to look now.
Yeah.
But there are going to be things that are still outside of your control.
Yeah. And I think that's where it comes. It's saying the same thing, but like, how much weight do you put on your expectation?
Oh,
And that's why
tons.
right. But
Tons.
that's where like the situational kind of things of like, if my wife or someone like you sets an expectation, I'm going to weigh that even heavier than
Sure.
someone else or somebody else or something else happening, and that expectation that goes along with that.
Yeah. Because there are things that change. It could be an appointment, a call, whatever.
Right.
And part of me is just like sometimes, depending on the context, I'm like,
Right.
such relief.
This is great.
And there are other things that's like, oh, I'm disappointed now.
Mm-hmm. Matt, what are you looking up?
There's some. I need a second. I have something about this.
I can't wait.
We'll see if it,
Bated breath.
keep going, please, because this might not turn out. I'm going through all of my notes.
But it might, so we should just sit here.
Right.
You're gonna make me forget what I was looking at. All that happens is an event either within your natural ability to bear it or not. So if it is an event within that ability, do not complain, but bear it as you were born to. If outside that ability, do not complain either. It will take you away before you have the chance to complain. Remember, though, that you are by nature born to bear all that your own judgment can decide bearable or tolerate in action if you represent it to yourself as benefit or duty.
Where's that from?
It was from Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
What does it mean to you?
You could take it like a lot of that book talks about the judgment that you place on things. And I think that it applies to change as well. And you can take anything that you've decided that you can take. And whether it is a good thing or it is a bad thing, it's in your capacity to handle it, and it's to handle it for your own benefit.
Yeah. It makes me think of that book I just listened to, Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks a lot, I guess, basically about the human capability to be in situations that are hard, uncomfortable, or abusive, even unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Because as long as you know your why,
Mm-hmm.
and you have this thing, I think sometimes when we focus on things that are about to change, we could potentially be putting ourselves in a tough position because we're just so focused on the thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's it. We're thinking about the thing that's about to change and the effects of that instead of the why.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting within Man's Search for Meaning too, the desire for change. And I mean, obviously, have you read the book? So the book, So the book is written by Viktor Frankl, who is a psychologist, and he writes about his experience in a concentration camp. From a psychologist's point of view, it's really, really interesting. And he talks about the hope for getting out, and people would set dates. It's like, I'm going to be out by this date.
By Christmas.
And then by Christmas,
Yeah, right.
they would die on Christmas because that thing doesn't happen. It's clearly not going to happen anytime soon. And you've set all of this hope and desire into this thing to happen, and then it's not there, and they would die. And I thought it was really interesting with that book, thinking about the desire for change. After he gets out, there's a whole thing too of everything that he went back to wasn't at all what he had dreamt that it was going to be. But by looking to the future, you're missing out. Not that in a isolated example, by constantly looking to the future, you're missing out on what is here and now.
Yeah.
I brought this up when we talked with Christina, but the book, The Gap and the Gain, was tied. But the gap is always looking forward, comparing yourself to where you're at now.
Yeah.
And the gain is looking at where you've come from and how much you've grown and how that leads to something else. I used to know this guy who owned a business, and I watched him basically grow it from the ground up. And he had this dream. This great guy had this dream of buying a Lamborghini. And he was 20 years old then, like 5 or 6 years ago. And he had this dream of buying a Lamborghini. And he was building this business, and the goal was to buy a Lamborghini. And he had built his business to a certain point, and he went in and tried to buy a Lamborghini, and they told him no, because his age, because of his credit, because of how much he was putting down, whatever. They told him no. And basically the story goes that he kept building his business, went back to the Lamborghini place 4 times. It was in California. Went back 4 times, and every time they told him no, he kept offering to put more money down, do more. And finally the 6th time he went back, he went in and said, I'm going to pay for the Lamborghini in cash. You can't tell me no this time. So he'd made $300 and some $1,000, went to buy this Lamborghini in cash. He bought the Lamborghini. And then basically the day after he bought the Lamborghini was the end of his business. And like, he will talk about this now, about how he got the Lamborghini. It was everything he imagined. Mm-hmm. But then he had he achieved the goal. And then he had nothing after that. He had nothing to keep working for after that.
Oh, man.
And he, like, that, the next day was basically the beginning of the end of his business. Like, he went into this crazy depression, all this kind of stuff after he got the Lamborghini, because he had reached his goal and didn't know where he was going to go from there. Mm. His whole business fell apart, ended up declaring bankruptcy. Like, crazy story. Mm. But I watched it happen. And it's a wild, wild, wild thing.
Mm. I'm thinking about change as being like this crazy thing that we dream, we pray for change, we hope for change. In the same sense, you could be on the other side and you are in fear of change. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All those things, though, looking to the future, having something, feeling like I don't want to lose this, so I have to do all these things because I don't want a negative change to happen. Right. Because once you get to a point, you have all this stuff, and it's like, well, the only change that would happen is maybe I lose some of this stuff. All those things, it feels like they all just rob you from being present. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get really real. How many times did we pray to have children? I mean, you guys,
sure,
for your first child, took you years.
Yeah.
For us, it took us a long time. Like, I mean, we would have these conversations. One day we're going to have kids. One day they're going to play together. One day they're going to do all these things. And they are. Mm-hmm. Like, all of those things, all of those dreams, all those prayers are true now. Mm-hmm. And in a day, a week, whatever it may be, like, you're going to have 2. We're going to, like, it's incredible to think about. But then also, how many times since our kids have been born have we had conversations that were like, they were never they were never like this, everything sucks, but these conversations like, dude, it would be so much easier if like little man wasn't just running around. Like, we could go do this. Yeah.
We have to talk in the kitchen without Ruby.
Right. Like these little things of where we did pray, we did dream, we did have these conversations, and now they're true. But
you're never going to go back to the time where it was just Brooke, Abby, you and I. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doing dinner or doing whatever. Go ahead.
20 years, dude. Once they're in college, I'm going buck wild.
But it's still not. Yeah, it's like, that's right. No, it's like sometimes I think we pray and we hope for change because we feel like our life is missing something. Mm.
Yeah.
And then there's a part of it, like, once you have that thing, I think for the first time, and not to go like, but it's like, I have so much to lose. Mm-hmm. So there's the change of being a parent, the change of being married, the change of any significant thing in your life, all of a sudden, like, that's amazing. But then what you have to lose now is
so much greater.
10x, 100x, more, like, you can't understand, like, I couldn't imagine. So there's a vulnerability that comes with change. Mm-hmm. And
there's a vulnerability with every stage of life. You add on a level of vulnerability when you get married. And now there's 2 of you, and you have to be responsible. Like, both of you have to be responsible for each other. And then that 100x is when you start having kids. Like, you move, you do all these
or
different
start a
things.
business, do all things.
100%. Like,
as we gain, we increase our exposure.
Like, think about the places that, like, this is the one that always gets me. I think about the places that I lived. when I was not married.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And how, like, realistically, sure, I was younger, but realistically, like, I was totally cool with it.
Sure.
Like, it wasn't that big of a deal. But now, I could never go back to a place like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I applied for global entry a few weeks ago. And in that, you have to list every place you've lived for the last, since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I was in college then. And so that took me down a whole trip of, then you had to
Corey
list your
graduated from
employment.
college in 1998.
That's right. I graduated in 2019.
2008.
But anyway, so that thought I had, like sitting there, noting down all of my addresses, thinking
I
of
went
the
to college
time that
when
I
it was still
lived there.
fun.
But then also you see this change of, I go from being an intern to where I am now. I go from living where I was now. I was then. Then within that, you think of who was I then? And all of the changes that had to come. Because even moving from that first college house to that first apartment out of college, and then going from graduating to starting this new job, then I had to go from that job that I was really comfortable with to a new one. And then I had to uproot cities entirely. And how you handle that change is really the big determinant of who you become. I think it's really, I had a whole moment like typing out all those addresses, just like, man, like it was really hard. And there have been a lot of really difficult circumstances, but if you look at everything to your benefit, and you can really, you only grow through change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is great. You only go through change. And I think we would phrase that in a lot of different ways. Earlier, the best way to learn is to fail. Like all these different kinds of things. But I think that we can get so fearful of change.
We resist change.
So much hesitation, so much anxiety and stress is created out of the fear of change or what could happen. That's completely hypothetical.
Yeah. As if the place that we've arrived now is the best it could ever be.
Right.
Right.
And so we don't want to change
Right.
because how could it be better than this? How could fashion
Let me
be
show
better
ya.
than cargo pants? Like we had to
So much storage, dude. Like,
I know. Keep all like it's being comfortable. But we all know deep in ourselves, like the fact is like we need to like be challenging ourselves. Like a change has to happen for us to progress. And as soon as we stop doing that, we become like
Complacent.
just complacent. And then ultimately things will change because again, we say change is inevitable. If we embrace change and challenge, hopefully that moves us forward in our development as humans, in our relationship with God.
right.
You know, but as soon as we say like, no, this is it. I now have what I need to have. I know what I need to know, and I'm not moving from this point. I think you would tend to see is like, you're still going to experience change, but it's going to start slowly moving backwards.
Yeah.
You're not with the time. And like,
I think it's
that's scary.
I think it's David Goggins that talks about that. Maybe it's like every day you're going one direction. There is no flat line. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. It might be him. It's somebody talks about that. Every day you're either, in everything that you do, you're either getting better and you're going towards your goal, or you're getting worse. There is no stagnant line.
Yeah. I don't know that I would say that I'm afraid of change at all. But if it's a thing that causes anxiety for people and at times for me. But if I had the option and said like, Corey, would you be okay with no change for the rest of your life? No, like I don't think so. I think I'd like a change.
Right.
I'd like some variety. I don't want the same cereal every day. I want the variety pack. Take a little Captain Crunch every now and then. Not this Cheerios BS.
Not even the sweetened Cheerios, just the regular Cheerios. I'm sure you reached that point.
Also, a change I've noticed, we used to just do regular Cheerios for Ruby. Today, when to get like some cereal for Ruby out of the cereal bin, go through it. It's like, I'll sneak a couple for Dad, thinking that it's just going to be like regular Cheerios. No, we've changed to sweetened Cheerios.
Honey Nut?
When did that? Oh, delicious.
Yeah,
It's so good. I didn't even like cereal as a kid, and I feel like I missed out.
It should be a crime
Well,
that you're feeding
well, see-
your kid unsweetened Cheerios.
This,
Oh, wait till you see what they make with sugar. They turn into rabid animals.
I'm trying to process the thought that's going through my brain. This is what we do when we think about change. When we go to, would you be comfortable with no change forever for the rest of your life? Our brains go to small details that actually don't matter at all. Our brains go, no, I don't just want one cereal for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Well, nobody ever said that no change in your life meant you had to eat the same cereal.
Right. You could
What
still
if you just had
don't have
the
the
same
same
family? You lived in the same place, you had the same job, but you could eat whatever you wanted to. But we go to this detail-oriented,
Nothing will change.
small
That is so interesting.
things.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're making all changes are not created equal.
Correct. But I think that we're going to, when we think about change, part of the reason why it creates that anxiety, creates that stress is because we start thinking about things like, have you guys heard the there, I don't know if it was actually like marriage talk or relationship talk, but it's like if you're having a disagreement or something's going wrong, like you go, will it matter in 3 minutes? Will it matter in 3 weeks? Will it matter in 3 years?
I've never heard that before, but that's
So like there's like this,
like a good perspective.
somebody wrote, I don't know where it came from.
If you were
Somebody did
producing,
it.
you could find this for us.
Or maybe it was 5 years or 10 years or whatever it was. But it was like, does whatever you're going through or whatever you're arguing about or whatever it is, does it matter in 10 minutes? Does it matter in 10 months, 10 weeks? Does it matter in 10 years? And if it doesn't even matter in 10 minutes, then why are you worrying about it at all?
I find when I get myself in those kind of like situations, specifically I'll talk about like with my wife, like the things that won't matter in 10 minutes, I usually realize that around 11.
It stopped mattering a
And I'm
minute
like,
ago.
I gotta go upstairs and it's like, it
Right.
doesn't matter. Yeah,
That's great.
that's a good perspective. Though.
That's great.
Like,
But that's what we do, I think, with a lot of change. And also, like, there's also a lot of change that we can be excited about. Right? That I feel like we're talking a lot about, like, the negative aspect side kind of thing. Of like, all this, we think of all this bad stuff. But there's also can be a lot of changes that can be great. They can be really good. They can be, like, that you can be really excited about.
yeah. I mean, I think all change has the potential for our growth.
Right. Like,
It's
are
just
you
how we approach it.
Are you more stressed or nervous? Stressed and nervous, or are you more excited about having a son?
Excited,
Right. And so it's like a good, we're pumped.
pumped.
But that's where it comes in of where it's like this thing of all change isn't bad. A lot of change is good. But where do we psych ourselves out at? And do we ever take positive change and turn it into negative change because how we think about it?
Things that are outside of our control or that we don't know exactly what they're going to look like are always going to make us feel a little bit uncomfortable. And then we equate, again, this idea of even whether it's physical, like working out or whatever, but like things that are uncomfortable for us are when growth happens usually too.
Yeah.
I read this the other day. It's the book called Stillness is the Key. The less energy we waste regretting the past or worrying about the future, the more energy we will have for what's in front of us. So it's like, is the excitement, while you are right to be excited, is that taking away from the present moment?
Yes. Or why we're regretful or discontent for what where we're at now, for like what we're hoping for a change. Yeah.
The whole thing with presence has really kind of slapped me in the face because I realized all the time. I think the book specifically talks a lot about how framing our phone in the frame of like, it is something that will make sure that we are never bored ever. And
Yeah. Do you ever get those moments when you've gone through your Instagram, Twitter, or whatever, and you're bored and you're like, you still pick it up and be like, should I just refresh this? Like, can I find something, please? God,
there has to be like, the YouTube algorithms run dry. No, it's awful. And like, then, I found that I do it a lot and I do it a lot. And, specifically in my relationship, there was a cool story that it talked about. There was an art. I'll try to find it, but see right there, I was just like, I can. This art exhibit at the MoMA in New York, where it was called The Artist is Present. And I believe there's an HBO doc or something. There is a documentary out there about this woman who the whole performance, the whole art piece was her sitting at a table. She did it for something like 78 consecutive days. And all that she did was give you her full attention. She didn't talk. She didn't say anything. She showed no emotion, but she gave you her full attention.
Like looked at you.
She just looked at you, but she was present. She was in what you were saying. And then it talked about this idea, like, if you're not here, I can tell.
Sure.
Like, I can tell you're listening to me right now, but if you weren't, I would be able to tell. And it talked about how people would wait hours in line for just to sit across from this woman. And in that entire time in line, they're on their phone, they're sleeping, they're trying to kill the time, entirely missing the opportunity of what's in line ahead of them. And then when they would get to it, the power of somebody actually being so present with them was so powerful that they would just start crying because we just don't have that anymore. And so I think about it in terms of now sitting at dinner with Kate, or if she starts to tell me a story and I see myself whip it out, because not all of her stories are the best. Sometimes I check out, and I'm sorry about that. But like, if I can just be there.
It's actually a feature, not a failure.
But if I can just be there and listen to her, how much better that is. Yeah. So Taylor, I'll read you the quote that I think kind of throws a wrench into.
Tom, I'm completely out of it now. This thing with like my family, with Brooke, with my friends, you guys can know this, that if you call me once and I don't pick up, if you call me back immediately again, then something's probably wrong. If I don't pick up and you call me back immediately 3 times in a row, it's like SOS. Something is wrong. I need your help right this second. My mother, I love you, but you just called me 3 times in a row to ask me how to turn your thermostat off. That is not an SOS moment.
She might have been sweating.
That is not
weather's been all
a
over the
moment
place.
where you call me 3 times in a row.
Good on you for answering your mom's call.
Send me a text message. How do I do this? You call me 3 times in a row. I got to pick up the phone. And I'm thinking, she's in an ambulance. Something is very wrong. I got to go get my shoes on right now.
Socks first. But yeah.
Depending on the emergency, I would just put shoes on, dude.
Crocs.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was how to turn off her thermostat. So I just got to zone in for a second.
Be present with us right now.
Be present.
Yeah.
So Taylor, I'll read you this
Read
quote.
it to me.
So this is from a book called Stillness is the Key. The less energy dang it, I did this the first time too. The less energy we waste regretting the past or worrying about the future, the more energy we will have for what's in front of us. So yes, we can be prepared for change. We can be excited for change. But in the end, is it a bad thing that's actually taking us away from the present?
I feel like we read a book that it said basically the same thing, but it was, you can't control the future right now, so stop worrying about it. You can't change it. Was it in Addison Bevere's book? Was it in Words with God? That the enemy uses anxiety in the form of the future and the past to cause you to not be present. I think it was in Words with God.
If it is, like, well done, Addison, because that's a really good way to put it.
I'm fairly confident it is in that, of the enemy uses like the fear of the future, the regret of the past. That is how it was worded. It was like fear of the future, the regret of the past, to take you out of the present.
I think even tying that into like what we were talking about last week with identity, and it's that regret of the past is such a big thing that if you're not, in terms of who I think I am today, if I'm defined by who I used to be or things that I used to do, the amount of space that takes up in my head and the amount of impact that has on my interactions with people.
Yeah. Whew. Regret.
It was something I even tried yesterday. It was interesting, like drumming. And this book, I started reading it a couple weeks ago. So all of the ideas are like new right now. And I'm really trying to, so in terms of like my relationship with Kate, it's like, how much can I put the phone down and just like be here? Even in drumming, it was interesting because like yesterday there was like 45 seconds where I just like closed my eyes, looked down, and rather than think about where's the song going to go, it was just like, here we are right now
in the flow,
just taking in all of the sounds and like hearing the words that are being said, listening to the crowd. And it's like, it's nothing to do with where we're going to go. It's where we are now.
Yeah.
And the
Nothing
freedom that
where
gave,
we're gonna go.
it's just like, what a cool thing.
I know we talked about it a little bit last week, but I just pulled up this idea of like, I think that across probably a lot of different religions, Eastern, Western, whatever, there is an underlining focus on this ability and the health of being present. And the fact that that's there throughout the human experience of being like, hey, you just need to take time, be present with your kids, be present with your wife at the dinner table, playing a song, being at church, whatever. Why is that so hard to do? And I was thinking and brought up the verse in Luke 10, or the story, when Jesus visits Martha and Mary. And I'm just going to read this. So Luke 10:38, I'm going to read on. This is in the Passion, because who doesn't love a little passion in their life?
Love it.
But it's, as Jesus and the disciples continued on their journey, they came to a village where a woman welcomed Jesus into her home. Her name was Martha, and she had a sister named Mary. Mary sat down attentively before the master, absorbing every revelation he shared. But Martha became exasperated with finishing the numerous household chores in preparation for her guests. So she interrupted Jesus and said, "Lord, don't you think it's unfair that my sister left me to do all the work by myself? You should tell her to get up and help me." And the Lord answered, "Martha, my beloved Martha." That's a great piece right there. "Why are you upset and troubled? Pulled away by all of these many distractions, Mary has discovered the one thing most important by choosing to sit at my feet. She is undistracted, and I won't take this privilege from her." The thing that Jesus is saying in this translation, though, that Mary has chosen is just to be in the presence of Jesus.
What were those verses again?
Luke 38 and through the end of the chapter, so 42. I also just love Jesus, again, this is interpreted, but like in the Passion, like the compassion and the love that he shows to Martha by this idea. I don't know why that just struck me of saying, "Martha, my beloved Martha. Why are you upset and troubled? Pulled away by all these many distractions, Mary has discovered the one thing most important by choosing to sit." She is undistracted, and I won't take that privilege away. So even the fact that it is a privilege to be able to be present.
Yeah.
Like, wow, we get to just be present here. And there are so many things, whether it's our phone or people, and there are like circumstances that are just like trying to take you away from the privilege of being in that moment.
Yeah.
That are trying to pull you towards, hey, this change might happen. This thing might be coming.
Yeah.
Why are you so troubled?
Check this out.
Man.
Listen to this. I'm going to read you guys something. You ready for it? Most of us spend our lives living anywhere but the present, and the enemy of our soul likes it that way. Based on research done by Matthew A. Killingsworth and Daniel T. Gilbert of Harvard University, people spend nearly half their waking hours thinking about the non-present or disengaged from what they're doing. How often our minds leave the present and where they tend to go, writes Killingsworth, is a better predictor of our happiness than the activities in which we are engaged. In the middle of his teaching on kingdom living, not long after teaching us how to pray, Jesus shares the same truth. Before you read it, stop a moment and invite God to talk to you through this passage. Sit in silence, breathe in and out, close your eyes for a minute. Then as you open them, begin to read. Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek all of these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them all. But seek first the kingdom of heaven of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Therefore do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. It's Matthew 6:25-34. But this little paragraph is what got me. I don't need to define anxiety because chances are you know it better than you'd like to. Anxiety is what happens to us when we try to live in the future, when we try to supersede chronology's limitations and insert ourselves in another place or time. We give ourselves over to worry when we face a moment that is not yet ours to face.
So good.
That is why faith is so important. It's the antidote to worry. If faith is the substance of things hoped for, then worry is the substance of that which we dread. Faith is power. Worry is anti-power. Faith brings clarity. Worry delivers confusion. Faith begets action. Worry creates inaction. Faith gives us eyes for the moment. Worry blinds us to the sacred now.
The sacred now. Oh. So if you find ourselves in places where we're looking at planned or unplanned, or we're faced change, the response is worry over that change or faith through the change.
That's what it
So
says
will
in
we-
Matthew 6.
So if change is inevitable, then man,
It's good stuff.
for peace through change is like, man, more faith.
Mm-hmm.
More faith. The
Just go
substance
listen
of
to-
things hoped for.
Just go listen to Jireh.
Man.
Song was taken out of that verse.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of those verses I feel like, for me growing up, I was just like, that was what you see. Do you remember Christian bookstores?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Crazy places.
Mm-hmm.
The Lamb's Way. That was what it Altoona.
great
I think-
T-shirts.
Really?
Not actually, like really, they're like funny T-shirts
Oh.
now, but
They're
Sure.
ironic. Huh?
yeah.
But that was like, I remember like that would be the people I was like, if he dresses the lilies. I can't say that verse without being like a little bit of the melody of Jireh.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things I think I just kind of always like, oh, everybody uses the dresses the lilies of the field, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't worry, just like kind of throw it away. But that perspective is actually so powerful. So if we can have faith and trust in the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things we don't see, then no matter what the changes, we're enough. He's more than enough.
We give ourselves over to worry when we face a moment that is not yet ours to face.
Stop, man.
Like, think about that.
Just like hang that above your desk anywhere. Put it on the mirror.
Can you text that to me right now?
Just put it in the group.
No, I'm just going to text it to
It's
Corey.
Yeah, how many battles do we go into fighting that we're not like supposed to be fighting right now? It's not our
Yeah.
it's not our cross. How many crosses do we carry that are not our cross?
And then it takes, because like the immediate thing is like, what's the buffer between what's mine and what's not? I don't know, but that's discernment and
I think it's Is it something that you're being presented in the moment?
I think it's really good. I want to provide an opportunity. I have a timer set up for a minute, just 1 minute.
Okay.
And I want to just sit. Don't look at me. Don't look at each other. And for anyone listening, just take 60 seconds and just listen and just be here. And don't let your brain go anywhere else. Just be here for 1 minute. Okay. 3, 2, 1. What's the first thing that you went to?
During that moment, if anyone is still listening right now after the minute is over, you set that up really, really well. If no one is listening after that minute of silence was up, you set it up very poorly.
That's what you were thinking.
That was the first thing that hit into my mind is if anyone is still listening to this podcast after a minute of silence is up, then the minute was set up really well.
Mm-hmm.
If no one is still listening after the minute of silence, it was not set up very well.
So you were just immediately thinking about consequences and behaviors of things that are going to be in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe because we've been talking to it, maybe because it's catchy, but like I went right to like the melody of like, if he dresses the lilies. And then that kind of turned into just sitting here and being like, I'm thankful to be here. And like just said, thank you. Like I did that for a little bit. And then just started repeating how much more does he love you? How much more does he love you? I just was in like it sounds like it's like the loaded thing, but like I think I just received the opportunity and like I felt like very much as like this is a time to just be thankful and to worship.
I love it.
Yeah, that was so for me that was a really helpful like quiet
compared to
Yeah.
Mr. Jones over
if this was a trivia thing, your salvation now hangs in the balance. What did you do?
If his was dumb, mine's even worse. All I could think here was my tinnitus.
These are the team I have.
I went to my breath and just started hearing my breath, feeling it. And then I started thinking of what I can hear. And since I drummed yesterday, my hearing is shot and it's just ringing all day. Just
wow.
It's a real bad problem that I've had for a long time.
Tinnitus.
I have tinnitus. So that's what I started thinking about. And then I started just trying to hear the sounds of the room.
You know, I watched this YouTube video several weeks ago, and it made me want to start meditating, but I haven't. But like it made me want to do it.
Yeah.
But I was trying to be present and not think about the future. You know what I mean? It was a YouTube channel called Yes Theory. If you've never watched any Yes Theory videos, they're super wholesome. They're actually really, really great.
I don't do wholesome.
Right. But the people of Yes Theory went to like this Shaolin monk monastery and stayed there for a couple of days.
Liu Kang.
And in the mornings, they would have meditation. And several of the people there were like they would try to meditate. But they were like, I can't empty out my brain. Like all that happens is I just have all these thoughts and like I can't just get to like empty.
Yeah.
And what was crazy and it like shifted my perspective is the monk responded back to them and was like, that is what the beginning of meditation is allow your brain to think and get all of those things basically out and allow yourself to think through a bunch of different things so that like your thought processes aren't like overwhelmed with all these things that you have going on around you.
It's
like,
really hard to like do the thing. I've been doing them through Apple Fitness meditations and yoga, and to get in a spot, I have like an expectation if I'm going to go into a meditation and being like, well, my brain's got to be empty. I don't want to think about anything else.
Right.
And one of the things they kind of like tell you, like guide you through is this idea of like, that's okay. So like to start is like start with like an intention. And my intention is to like there are some days like I just put my intention going into a meditation as just on like my wife. And I feel like it's like, you know, the Ben Affleck version of Daredevil, how his vision when he sees Garner and it's like running, it's like, that's what I see in my mind.
Flashy dots.
Flashy dots. I just like, and I just try to see Abby. And then inevitably they're like, other things are going to come. And they're like, that's okay. Don't be like, don't try to like, Abby's like, think on her. Other things come in. That's fine. Move it and shift back to your intention. And then that's kind of like the flow is just always kind of coming back. Because when I try to just be like, meditate, don't think of anything, I'm just like, can't do it. But you have to know that the intention is the why, and like having to know what your why is, and like,
and the practice from my practice is less of like, let's not think of anything. It's building a discipline of having power over yourself in the way that, in your thoughts. Because I realized through trying to sit there in that minute, like how much I'm not actually at power of what comes into my own head. And there was a great quote that I just found again from Seneca: most powerful is he who has himself in his own power. And that goes from just your daily disciplines of your workouts, but also to just everything stems from your head. And if you have power over your head and your brain, first and foremost, how much more you can do.
yeah.
There's another quote I think is interesting that I would enjoy your thoughts on.
Make it quick.
Sure.
It's 8:20.
All of humanity's problems stem from man's ability to sit quietly in a room alone.
Wait, all of men's problems?
All of man's problems, like all of humanity's problems, stem from not being able to sit in a room quietly in a room alone.
Well, you could argue that's not what we were made for.
Sure.
You think so? How are we made?
If we were meant to be alone, Eve would have never been there.
She came later. Yeah. And I would also say most of our problems, like think about the wars that have happened.
Oh,
A lot of them happen with bunch of rooms and the same guys in the same room shouting.
right. Well, I think that's a whole nother conversation.
How many problems have you ran into because you say the first thing that comes to your mind, and the first thing that comes to your mind
lot.
isn't the right thing to say? But if you had a minute of stillness to just...
Yeah, I think that me generally at my best is not just responding with my first impulse verbally.
Yeah, I do. Got me into a lot of problems.
Why do you keep doing it?
Because like 80% of the time it works.
60% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah. You think 80% of the time that you just shoot off with the thing that's on your mind the first time is...
Here's what I'll say. I think 80% of the time I'm not wrong. Doesn't mean I'm right. Just means I'm not wrong. You disagree with my number? You think it should be lower?
I think
or higher? 95% of the time?
You saying like 90? No, I think that probably 100% of your problems come from 20% of your...
That's probably... I mean, not at you, I'm saying like...
No, I mean, it's for all of us. I think it's like, that's right. Like 80-20.
I would say like... Probably, I would say most of the first things I say are right too, but it is that 20% when it's really bad that it's like... that little bit of attitude that's just
Right.
It's the
sass.
tone. It's the
the
tone.
tone. Yeah.
Lifted your eyebrows.
Well,
My
We
slow
went-
blink.
we went from talking about change
I do a slow blink.
to
I used to get
presence,
smacked as a kid. And I still,
to-
I mean, I was just,
history, to how Corey thinks the first thing that comes out of my mouth is right 95% of the time.
You gotta go tell Brooke that.
No, that would be a part of the 5%. Like if I went and told her that, it would be a 5% one.
so you're going to choose not to engage in that 5%.
Right, I'm cognizant of it now.
Right.
Well, there's the 95%.
I'm
That was the
present.
first thing that came to your
I'm
mind.
present.
You
in
were
the
right.
moment,
Yeah, yeah.
thinking about it.
Man.
Corey, do you feel any I don't know, like this topic had been brewing in the mind.
Yeah,
Do you
I don't think I
feel-
was looking for like an answer
Right.
to anything. I think it's just about acknowledging that this is a reality and it's some things I'm thinking about, and it's something that we all go through. And I think that if nothing else, I think that the conversation kind of landed in the importance of not taking the moment that we're in for granted, not discarding the moment that we're in, but being present. I think that anytime we have a conversation that kind of shifts our focus and gears us back to a position and a posture where we're going to be more present in that moment or the next moment and the next moment. So I can take that and be better tomorrow if I'm thinking more about being present. So I think that's the value.
You like that? Matt, you were on it today. You had a bunch of quotes.
Thank you.
You read a lot.
He's probably got to get on the road,
Yeah.
you know?
Matt, I have a question before you go and get on the road. I have a final Bible trivia question for you. Final Bible trivia question to end the night with. How many days did creation take God?
What?
How many days did it take God to
There's
create
different
creation?
schools of thought.
Degradation.
Right. How many days?
There's different schools of thought.
Right. I'm just saying.
So it's 7 days.
If you look at the text, so your answer is 7. That's what we're not looking for
6 days.
explanation here. Is it 6 days or is it 7 days?
6.
What about the seventh day?
Didn't you rest?
Did he?
Yeah, he rested.
Are you sure?
Yes, because that's the Sabbath.
Love you guys.
Come on, is that right?
Love you, man.
That's right.
That's
Come
good.
on.